This is the 7th of 18 chapters of a book-length poem called To Banquet with the Worthy Ethiopians, a memoir of life before the alphabet, and it's called Redaction. Under the darkening roof tree of the mind, twice notched, figured with cave runes, generations of eyes and blistered hands labor over lines. In the mouth, a faint metallic tang, iridescent as the wings of the emperor dragonfly, great Achilles plucked out of the air and gnashed down. Lines of Yeats, of James Wright, of Martin's Ferry, Ohio. Lines of Catullus that once drowned my heart. Terza Rima of Dante, Vion's ink welts, and the cosmic, breathless strophes of Neruda. Lines brazed from a jewel-encrusted page, or zigzagging like mad Odysseus' plow, numbers metastasizing from my list, spiraling down into oblique rhymes of cereal boxes and scripture of blooming dales, triacly cellophane, and Louisville sluggers branded mantle in burnt umber, and the make-believe vapor trails of my father's paper planes. The mind stays cowled under the moon. The tongue is laden with metallic wings that can't be swallowed, or if swallowed, can't be sung. This is how it is without the child rocking in the house of his own making. Sharp-edged verbs piercing bronze syntax, each fresh and gem and spurting blood. Countless names striving under the tireless sun, foot to spondee foot, unwilling to yield. And this is how it must have been the morning after the night of the naked burning girl, when Homer, dazed with longing and lost love, tore open the package and his house went silent and his marble eyes opened on a strange horizon. The alphabet. Awkward at first, stuttering so the stylus could keep up. The process, transcription, the manual called it, taxed but soothed too, nothing like entrancement when each utterance dervished through his rocking torso. No rapture with the alphabet. His loins remained cool, his mouth moist. Triangles, rhomboids, circles, and half circles hardened into stanzas, passages. Finally, he stepped back from the work desk and squinted at the scarred, translucent scroll. Never before had he seen the Iliad, never realized its nuance and dimension. Till now, his version changed with every venue. At palaces, he trumpeted Agamemnon. Sports events, Achilles. Weddings, Hector and Andromache. The titty bars, the Ares bondage scene. He never made it through in a single go. That would take weeks and leave the listeners dead. He never paid heed to any blueprint. Sure, he eavesdropped on the scholiastic gabble. Great gas to hear the junior geezers fret about interpolation and mixed dialects. Does the Iliad portray a Bronze Age or iron? Does hearing voices mean the primitive corpus callosum failed as of yet to knit hemispheres of the prelapsarian brain? Did Achilles suffer PTSD? Do rhapsodes remember or forget? But the alphabet began to change his mind. No improv, no entrancement. It was hardly verse-making at all. An encryption, a visual echo. Scrabbling letters, Homer saw what counted. Wasn't the trance the many-minded voice, not the rocking or apotheosis. It was triumph and murder, acts of mortal men, not a message from another world or a warped replica of this one with all its tedium and ambiguity. A nape-tingling shoot-'em-up, the world's greatest war novel. With his newfangled Phoenician toy, Homer might give them just that. Everything about the poem shifted. The heroes, too, were cast in a different light. When he chanted, they transmogrified into the upturned faces of his audience. There were 1,000 Agamemnons, 1,000 Hectors and Diomedes. But the alphabet defined them, pin them down. Odysseus was blunt-nosed, with gray eyes and a livid scar down his bowed leg. Agamemnon was slim-hipped, hollow-cheeked. Achilles' face was hooded. Waves of rage emanated from his inscrutable brow. The alphabet's cursives and declensions, its relentless absolutes and values, its need to pluck each wave from the hissing surf, soon fixed Homer's eyes and gaze. The poem's action veiled, and he viewed the war from a great distance. How terrible it had been, he saw now. Singing viscera, ripped sinew, spurting black blood, seeing darkness flood dying eyes. Terrible to sing a hero's death. When deadly Diomedes hurled his spear straight between the eyes to Pandarus' nose, the poet himself felt the tearing point, tasted iron blood between his teeth. The tireless bronze sliced the poet's tongue at the root, coming out the jaw. Homer fell from Pandarus' chariot, the hero poet's armor rattling. When Idomeneus' pitiless bronze struck Aramis in the mouth, the divine utterance croaked into a shriek, piercing the blanched skull where song seeded. The death cloud enveloping Aramis closed too over the rocking, chanting bard. How exhausting. Homer could do one or at most two death scenes a night. But the alphabet deadened pain, salved horror. Carving the scenes of mayhem into code, Homer felt a potent tingling. His cheeks flushed as if he just consumed a skin of unmixed poppy-scented wine. Like Priam in the Tecoscopia, Homer surveyed the ornamental gore far from the slaughter that had soaked his chants and almost ruined his Osgood-Schlattered knees. This rush that left in the belly an untouched jewel. This must be what the sophists called catharsis. With rising excitement, Homer realized his audience would die for this catharsis. They adored blood, loved the clash of war, could never get enough of his shield rattling. Now, with grisly death so telescoped, the body count could spike considerably. Homer felt the gnomon's shadow lengthen, heard seconds dripping from the water clock. Months passed, his beard and hair matted. Still he bent over the alphabet each morning, digging into the text. Now eternity was parceled out in clauses instead of brightening the rim of each instant. Rocking and chanting, he had fed the voice, and the voice had fed the utterance. But now he could reread, control the pace, compare, point, pause, revise. Soon it became clear what had to go. Without the bells and feathers and whistles, slapstick was dull. The aegis, too. One thing to chant the holy words, another to paint them obscene on a scroll. Still, without their presence, radiating like a monstrance to display the underlying likeness of all things. The Iliad would clod-hop like that redneck Hesiod. So in place of the holy aegis, Homer invoked the wood nymph Simile to flit between the eye and page. The goddess touched his hand, and his wrist flicked suspense in place of intense. Sight for insight. In his silent office between moon and cup, Homer's eyes and mind sharpened. Bending over the text, he fancied he saw, emerging from beneath, arabesques and runes, what the manual had promised, subtext. Events, subtext revealed, weren't fated, they were arranged, arising from the text. One episode in particular enthralled, a moment half forgotten in the 10th year after Apollo's plague. Achilles' rage. Reading and rereading the scenes following, the threads he first dismissed as motes of moonlight began to coalesce. The skein coiled. Agamemnon's pride ignites Achilles' rage, swelling the High King's gore and framing the duel between Menelaus and Paris, which he'd always played with fork and sausage, which leads to Hector slagging his brother, which reflects on the braggadocious Greeks. Enter Diomedes, a knot of skirmishes, each doubling the action that preceded it and seeming to culminate in the anticlimactic Glaucus duel. Homer guffawed, recalling the day he'd won the duel's rights, dicing with an addled Corinthian bard. A gorgeous set piece in the northern mode, paired patrilineal blandishments, comic armor exchange, and more hijinks, that contraption Deus Ex Machina to save the son of Aphrodite, poof. Even though it came from a different era, Homer never updated lingo or weaponry. It fit neatly, presaging impending dark. Then what Alphabet Manual 18C called paradox. Odysseus supplicates Achilles, fearing Hector, who kills Patroclus, murdering Achilles' soul and ensuring his, Hector's, own death, and Achilles at the hands of the weakest figure in the poem. The Iliad wasn't sacred, as it sounded. It was engineered, symmetrical. The gods were superfluous, a divine machine. Yes, there was poetry throughout. Verses descended directly from the voice. A day of dappled sea-born clouds, or season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, or heart's charity, hearth's fire. Hundreds of lines and images, unsullied from the prime source, searing the mind and leaving the faintest luminescence. Who knew what future bards might glean such jewels? But with the alphabet, all that would have to go, along with Odysseus riddling sphinxes, Agamemnon buying wins with his daughter's life, or his favorite, Thersites, sailing in a masted Pentecoster away from Troy to distant Ethiopia. All these scenes and poetry took place before Achilles chucks it in year 10. Spectacle, yes, and they dealt mysteries and revealed the character of gods and men. But his audience cared mostly about plot. And plot could be constructed to begin in the 10th year with Achilles' rage. Homer could cut the rest, the manual promised, using a technique it called redaction. Better, he'd leave them hanging, wanting more, by cropping the poem to end with a funeral pyre. Foreshadowing, as the manual urged. For all the power of the alphabet spread under his hands in his silent office, Homer couldn't swallow all the verse. It took 3,000 years to finally cleanse the embellishments which were meant mostly to please the ear. Stock phrases and epithets with a meaning were of no account, though W.H.D. Rouse did concede to leave in the muse for the sake of the brand name. And when the former poet raised his head from the first text, the face he showed the moon is the face we know, ageless, marble. Thank you.